We're still here. Welcome into the double FU, the FU times 2. It is week 16 somehow. We are the Fantasy Football Universe, and we are back for our week 16 wide receiver ranking show from all 4 of our FFU members. I am Jeremy Schulman, hashtag won't make that mistake ever again, referring to benching Mike Evans for Amari Cooper. Good Lord.
No.
Maybe just follow. I make rankings, right? Maybe weekly. Maybe just follow my rankings when I decide who to play players. Who knows?
What?
Novel idea. Crazy. This guy over here is Jesse Moeller. Hashtag Devontae Adams is him. Jesse, how you doing?
Yes. I like my old wide receivers. What can I say? I like them old, folks. It is what it is. We don't like those young pups. Get them out of here. You Marvin Harrison fans, kick rocks. We ain't starting to do this week. We were going with the old guys, Mike Evans and Devontae Adams, all the fun. The Hall of Famers. It is what it is. You trust the process with those guys. Yeah, I have Harrison and Stanley Lowe this week, by the way. Yeah. I also have Tyreek Hill and Stanley Lowe, so that's the one old wide receiver. I'm like, man, maybe don't trust that old wide receiver. But, I'm excited. It's, semifinals. You're putting your guys out there. We have for a few guys like the Chicago Bears situation, the juicy matchup. You can play all of those wide receivers if you want to. It's a fun week, man. I'm excited. There was more fun to talk about the wide receivers than our running back show. Like running backs at a certain point, it's just like, I gotta start this guy. No, wide receivers like, okay, cool. I'm excited to play all these guys. Like, yeah, I'm a little bit more hyped for this episode.
I love it. Yeah, and as you say, don't trust the young wide receivers. Our top 5, who we're going to talk about in a second, are all. I don't think anyone's over 25. They're definitely not over 26 years old. But they're the usual suspects. So we'll get into that. We'll talk all about the guys who we want to play, the guys who we're maybe a little bit concerned about, and we'll make sure that you are ready for your semifinal matchups. Hopefully your semifinal matchup, unless you're like running 4 guys in, 4 teams in the playoffs in a 10-team league. We don't need to talk about that crap. Why don't we just get on with the show and talk about our tier 1 wide receivers? They are the young guns, and you know their names. Jamar Chase at 1 against Cleveland. I do not know why SC does not have this man at number 1 overall this week. He will need to be chastised for that. The rest of us do. He's an absolute stud. Cleveland is reeling. Forget about it. Jamar Chase is going to blow them out yet again. Fire him up. Justin Jefferson at 2. At Seattle. You cannot stop this man. The only man who can stop this man is his own quarterback, limiting him from absolutely going nuclear. Puka Nacua at 3 at the New York Jets. He's proven it time and time again. When will we believe this man? We will believe him now. Puka is going to roll at the Meadowlands, if they still call it the Meadowlands, MetLife, whatever the heck it's called over there.
Something like
Nico Collins at 4 at Kansas City. Hate the matchup, love the player. Somehow got there just on 17 yards last week. Put the ball in the end zone twice. You cannot stop Nico, no matter who you are. He'll find a way to get to the top. Ace Ventura 2 reference. Number 5 is CD Lamb against Tampa Bay. He's going to crush. Cooper Rush has been serviceable, and CD has been benefiting. Tampa can't stop anybody through the air. And in that same game, Mike Evans at 6. Stop fading this man. I didn't even fade him, and I faded him last week. He was my wide receiver 7. Cooper was like in the 20s. Let's start Amari Cooper. Why not? What the hell, me? Don't be like me. Be like somebody who starts Mike Evans and treats him like the wide receiver 6 he is.
Like the royalty king that he is. It's Sir Mike Evans from this point moving forward. We'll just knight him in the fantasy playoffs, right? And be like, all right, you're official. We're riding with you. Because it seems like he shows up more in the playoffs than anybody else. Or maybe this is just my memory of holding on that championship game performance where we put up 50 points. Could have a little bit of bias with that. Do I? I don't know. We will say that. Talking about I don't know why anyone would have Jamar Chase not wide receiver 1. Yeah, kind of my question about that is because his role is freaking fantastic. Only Malik Neighbors has a better technical fantasy points or expected fantasy points per game, but his offense is abysmal. His quarterback sucks. Jamar Chase is doing this with Joe freaking Burrow. That's all I need to do. And their defense is trash. So it sets up week in and week out for them to just be fantasy superstars. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, he's been down a little bit this year, but to your point, his quarterback play. You know what it is with CD and Puka. Puka's been incredible this year. I remember we talked about in the offseason, Cooper Rush or Cooper Cup or Puka Nacua, and we're like, sometimes it's just simple. We overthink these things, right? One guy set up the career receiving record as a rookie. The other guy kind of coming off injuries happened again. So, I don't think you're fading any of the guys, really. I think the lowest we have any of these guys on our rankings is wide receiver 7. I have Nico at 7, and that's probably the lowest of this group of guys, I think. So we're all in on all these guys, and I love Nico this week. The matchup's not bad. I just don't think those offenses are really going to be able to support it, which is crazy. Talk about Houston and Kansas City not being able to support fantasy. that's kind of where we're at with those teams. So hopefully Mahomes is not too limited because he's more than likely going to play, even though I think they should bench him, but they're going to play. So yeah, like you have these guys, you know what you're getting. It's really just Jamar Chase and everyone else. It's just is what it is for fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, and with Nico Collins, ridiculous. For some reason, Houston out of the bye decided, let's give this guy his lowest amount of targets we've given him on the season and win the game against Miami somehow. Let's just lean in our defense. Really weird stuff from Houston. Hasn't happened all season. Now they go to Kansas City, and guess what? They could do the same thing, and they could win the same way, especially with Mahomes hobbled. This Kansas City defense is allowing nothing on the ground. They are the toughest against fantasy running backs. It doesn't bode well for Joe Mixon, but you can get over them in the passing game if you need to. Houston, and specifically Nico Collins, is able to. So I really do like him this week and every week. So we'll lower our expectations slightly, but not too much. Nico, wide receiver 4 as a result. Let's move on to our tier 2 of wide receivers. This is wide receiver 7 through 12. Again, in half PPR format scoring. We have Amon-Ra St. Brown at 7. He's going up against Chicago. That used to be a difficult matchup, no longer. A.J. Brown at 8 at Washington. That used to be not a difficult matchup. It still isn't. We got Devontae Adams at 9, and we should probably move him up. The wide receiver 1 from a week ago going up against a Rams secondary that cannot stop a nobody. We got Brian Thomas, BTJ, at 10. At Las Vegas, going to absolutely smash. Another guy who is only held back by his quarterback. Also quarterback proof. Something a lot of these rookie wide receivers are proving, at least the top end ones. Hello, Malik Neighbors, who we'll talk about in the next section. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 11 at Los Angeles. That's against the Chargers. We don't love the matchup here, but we love Cortland Sutton. He had a down game last week out of nowhere and still had a pretty decent day. So we'll talk a little bit about him. And then Terry McLaurin at 12. We love the player. We love the situation, but he's going up against Philly. So he gets a slight knock this week. He's still 10 or 11, but SC is so down bad on Terry at 20, wide receiver 20. Oof. He could be right? Philly could use all of their resources to just completely eliminate Terry. They probably should, but we'll see. He's our wide receiver 12.
Yeah, I think we can talk about Adams for a second just because he's been that good. Like the difference between him and Garrett Wilson, they have a very similar role, but just the difference is Adams week in and week out continues to be just the more efficient player the guy's connected with. And obviously he had the monster blow game last week, right, where he just went nuclear. I think he was at like 19 expected points for that game, basically doubled his expected role. You can see Garrett Wilson on the sideline freaking out because he wasn't getting the one-on-one looks and like this throw the fade, right? So I don't see why it's going to change. Like it's worked really well in this offense ever since they brought in Adams. They've taken a step forward. Particularly last month with Adams, the offense has taken an even bigger step forward because of how good he's been. He looks
for sure
not quite peak Devontae Adams, but real close to it, man. He looks awesome. It's so funny how we're seeing like I was talking about these older wide receivers. Like you look at our rankings, like these guys that have been there for like 5 years. It feels like they're just gonna do it again. So it's like Devontae Adams, you fire him. Cortland Sutton's back in our life, but yeah, to your point, it's a bad matchup. It is what it is. And then I will say Brian Thomas Jr. Stop fading this man. Mac Jones loves Brian Thomas Jr. So I don't see any reason why we shouldn't love Brian Thomas Jr. His target share is pushing like 28% with Mac Jones as his quarterback. So it's like I have no reason to fade him. He's just gonna keep seeing targets. He's gonna keep being dominant. He looks incredible. He's like Malik Neighbors, except his role just works better right now for whatever particular reason. Yeah. Even though Malik Neighbors finally had a bounce back game, I think both of these guys are firing up with confidence just because they look so good. And even with bad quarterback play, it don't matter, man. The talent's there. Just play him.
Yep. Brian Thomas Jr. since the bye, that's 3 games. Jesse, how many targets per game is he averaging?
I should have paid attention to the stats on this one. I had it. I think he's at like 8. I think he's around that range. Is it 8?
12
my
targets
God, not even
game. Close. 12 targets a game. He's also averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of, it looks like, 90-ish receiving yards and a touchdown per game as well. Scored 2 last week on the Jets. You can get over on the Jets. So we have to temper expectations for, the Las Vegas Raiders. Going to Las Vegas. No, do not temper any expectations. Brian Thomas is going to do it again. And Cortland Sutton sees roughly 9 targets a game. He's received 9 over the last 2 weeks as well. Unfortunately, only converted 3 for 32, just an anomalous game from him. I expect him to get a little bit better, get right against the Chargers. Not a great matchup, but he's still going to get that insane volume that we love to see at the wide receiver position. Moving on to our tier 3, we have wide receivers 13 to 18. And we'll start with that guy, Malik Neighbors, rookie wide receiver Malik Neighbors of the New York the New York Less Than Giants, at Atlanta, though, this week. So Malik Neighbors should still be plenty viable. Drake London at 14 in the same game has a great matchup, but a new quarterback. We'll see how he gels with Michael Penix. The wide receiver 15 is T. Higgins against that suspect as hell Cleveland secondary that is just decimated by injury. He joins wide receiver 1 in our hearts and our rankings, Jamar Chase, as like the guys you want to. There's no question about T. Higgins. You fire him up weekly, he is going to produce for you. He's going to do it again here. Jackson Smith and Jigba at wide receiver 16, been an absolute monster ever since DK went down with injury. Since he came back, it doesn't matter. He is the wide receiver 1 in Seattle. It's been ridiculous, but let's go. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 17 against San Francisco. Not scared of San Francisco, scared maybe of Twitter and what Tyreek Hill has put out about needing to leave the team. I don't know. What the hell? Just go out and catch the damn ball. Hopefully Tua continues to throw him the damn ball. I think he will. And then Cooper Kupp, Mr. Goose Egg himself at 18 against those New York Jets. I expect Puka and Cooper to go off this week. How about you?
Yeah, they're gonna bounce back. The one thing with the Miami Dolphins offense is they've been trending in the right direction, but then last week was like, well, welcome back. It's John Smith's world. We're all living in it. So Tyreek kind of saw a little bit of a hit. But in the games that Johnny does it, like Waddle's the one that suffers more than Tyreek. So I get it with Tyreek if people are worried about him, but this is kind of why I don't like this matchup, and that's what it is, particularly against San Francisco. I worry about him in this matchup. So would it shock me to have him go a monster game? No, it would not shock me, but my expectations have been severely lowered because even only on 7 targets last week, he had 2 receptions for 36 yards. Just an abysmal showing by that offense as a whole. Where John Smith's really the only one that got anything going. Like they couldn't do anything with Waddle. HN struggled in the game. He still put up points, but. And then T. Higgins, I don't know why we continue to keep T. Higgins outside of our top 12, wide receivers. I think he needs to be bumped up in there. It does get harder when he gets to the top 8, but I think he needs to be a top 10 guy perennially because when he's been on the field, he's been freaking phenomenal for them. So another 20-point game last week. He's had, it seems like over half his games have been 20-plus points this year. He's got a couple 30-point burgers in there too. He's just been really, really good. And I think the one thing about T in a contract year is he's made himself a ton of money. So wherever T ends up next year, if it's not Cincinnati, which I expect it to be, he's going to be one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL. So this is my just giving you your flowers post to you, T. Higgins, because you have been awesome. And I'm looking forward to both him and Jamar Chase going for 300-plus yards combined between those guys. It should be a fun week for those two, man. It's going to be fun.
Sounds good. We also have Chase Brown ranked insanely high this week. Why not? Just every week with this Cincinnati offense, this defense is abysmal. And now Sam Hubbard potentially out for a significant amount of time as well. Caught a touchdown and said, see you later on the season. I don't need to be here anymore. This defense sucks anyway. But yeah, you got to love T. Higgins. Roughly 9 targets a game, easily scoring pretty much every other game. Cleveland decimated by injury. I think he's going to crush. One note on Tyreek Hill, and it's not about Hill, it's about Jalen Waddle. He did not practice on Wednesday. He's got a knee injury from the week before, and there has been some chatter that he might not play this week. If that's the case, people are pumping up Malik Washington. You know who you need to be pumping up? Tyreek Hill, and probably more so Jonnu Smith, because Jonnu Smith is going to go nuclear if Jalen Waddle sits down. But you hope Tyreek Hill continues to approach the double-digit targets for himself and for your fantasy teams. But yeah, you do not fade him this week. I think he's going to be just fine. And of course, the matchup is nice against a bad San Francisco team that will not make the playoffs. You heard it here. Yeah. You heard it here.
Yeah, I'm with you. Boo, San Francisco sucks.
Yeah. Surprise with the Seahawks, man. Let's move on Tier 4. Speaking of San Francisco, at wide receiver 19, we got Juwan Jennings. He's facing Miami. Miami hates to give up fantasy points to the wide receivers, so they don't. We'll see if Juwan can crack that code this week. Ladd McConkey at 20, assuming full health. He's a great play, except he's playing Denver in division, a great defense, and I don't know if they can roll Pat Surtain to him, but they will try. And maybe they'll just double him with McMillan and whoever else they can put on this guy. McConkey will still see plenty of targets, I think, but that health is the real concern. Garrett Wilson at 21 against those Rams. We know Devontae is the wide receiver 1. How is that possible? Aaron Rodgers is the answer, but Garrett Wilson is still open. He's still capable. And in this matchup where the Rams, I think, will absolutely destroy this New York Jets defense, the Jets will need to keep up. We saw them able to do that last week in a surprise win. So I think they can do it again. Hopefully Garrett Wilson gets involved in this one. At wide receiver 22, it's Jacoby Myers. The carousel of quarterbacks in Las Vegas continues. Jacoby Myers continues to kind of score fantasy points sometimes. We're hoping against the Jags that's going to be a lot easier than usual for him. Zay Flowers at 23. There's another guy who just can't find consistency in an offense. The Ravens threw 5 touchdowns last week. Zay Flowers had like 65 yards and nothing. So against Pittsburgh, yikes. And then DJ Moore, great matchup last week, came through on volume. This week against Detroit has the opportunity to do it again, but it's just so hard to trust this Detroit offense. And Keenan Allen is taking every single touchdown in the passing game away from everybody else. So hard to pump up DJ Moore.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys I really like in this tier. And you talked about Jacoby Myers. I am like multiple rounds above him this week compared to you guys because he's playing Jacksonville. Wide receiver 1s have destroyed the Jaguars. That is Jacoby Myers. If you were watching this game like last week, I was panicking because I was watching this game. I needed points from Jacoby Myers. Didn't have a target until 55 minutes until the game because the Desmond Ridder stuff was a disaster. Yeah. The thought process is Aiden O'Connell's coming back. Aiden O'Connell could support both of him and Brock Bowers, so I'm much more confident in Aiden O'Connell than I am Desmond Ridder. Just sit Desmond Ridder's ass on the bench. He's a terrible quarterback. I don't want to see it. So I'm in on him. I think he's a really good play this week. If you have him, you got to fire him up. Juwan Jennings, I'm just going to say the process was good with him. Since week 10, here's his target shares. 30%, 35, 20, 27, 30, and 25% last week. You're going back to Juwan Jennings. He's a really good NFL wide receiver. They just had a bad game. Everyone's super inefficient. The weather did not play them. I expect him to be another top 20 guy for you. So I really like those 2 guys in that performance. But we're still talking about Garrett Wilson's of the world, Zay Flowers, DJ Moore, who I really like this week because they're playing Detroit. Detroit gives up a ton of fantasy points right now to wide receivers. So I am okay starting the majority, if not all, the big 3 Chicago wide receivers this week. If you need them, you can play them because the game script works out perfectly. We saw it on Thanksgiving how it worked out where they had to air it out in the second half, and they were just giving up points to them. So we saw Keenan Allen was the one that was really beneficial in the last game where they kind of came back to the last minute, even though they were getting destroyed. Keenan Allen was one of the wins. I don't care who you have higher, but I think you should be playing both DJ Moore and Keenan Allen this week.
Yep. Hard to argue with that. A couple of guys that I'm worried about in this tier. Number 1, Zay Flowers. You mentioned it. Going up against Pittsburgh, not great. Last time they played Pittsburgh, he was the wide receiver 31. But even worse, Zay Flowers has not been finished better than wide receiver 31 since week 9. So it's week 16 here, folks. So it's really a problem for Zay Flowers. He's in that span. He's also scored a touchdown, but he's not finding the end zone a lot. That's not his game. He lives on volume and yak yards specifically, when he's able to grab that ball, turn upfield and make a play. And if he's not able to, it's a struggle for him. But the other guy you mentioned who you're high on, Jacoby Myers, my concern is more that over the last 3 weeks, 11, 10, and 9 targets, converted that in half PPR to wide receiver 26, 32, and 37. It's not him. It's his quarterback. We can say this about a lot of wide receivers, but it's also Brock Bowers, right? When you have a limited passing game and, limited volume in that game, and you have an exceptional talent like Brock Bowers, the targets are going to flow to him. So Jacoby is the wide receiver 1 on the team, but he's not the number 1 target most weeks. Sometimes that flops back and forth. Sometimes he is. But Brock Bowers has really limited him with the fact that they haven't had capable passing. Aiden O'Connell is not Gardner Minshew, but like you said, Desmond Ridder is not Aiden O'Connell. So hopefully he bounces back this week.
Yes. Yeah. It's similar to Arizona with like both those top two guys, how it consolidates for those guys. The difference is like Marvin Harrison Jr. is just not living up to expectations. And Jacoby Myers is consistently pushing like 27% target share throughout the game. Him and Brock Bowers are both like pushing 30%. So they combined, it's like 60% targets from those two guys. I like them both. But yeah, it is a little bit lower because the quarterback and offense just struggles to support them. If we had a good quarterback, these two would more likely be like top 5 in the position. But you know what? It is what it is.
Hey, sometimes you just got to play the hand you're dealt. And that's what Jacoby Myers is doing and will continue to do as long as he's the Las Vegas Raider. That hand is not gonna be, a kings on the flop. So he's going to struggle a little bit. Let's get into our tier 5. These are wide receivers 25 to 30. We'll start with Jordan Addison. They play Seattle. Jesse, is Seattle primarily a man team or a zone team?
I'm actually not sure that you asked me that because I was actually going to ask you that question. I'm not sure.
Yeah. No clue. Let me know if you know by the time I run through these names. If not, I'll look it up. But Jordan Addison at 25, he's getting there on volume. But the reason I asked that question is because Jordan Addison significantly, as per Matt Harmon, plays much better against the zone coverage teams. He's able to beat them. TJ Hawkinson is more so a man beater. Last week, it was kind of a man scheme in Chicago, and both of TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison did, put up the same number. So take that for a grain of salt. It is what it is. At wide receiver 26, we got Devontae Smith against Washington. Sometimes he doesn't get there on volume, but he gets into the end zone. Devonta Smith is just a very good NFL wide receiver, so it's really hard to fade him much beyond this. Khalil Shakir at wide receiver 27 versus New England. Amazing matchup for him. The problem is Josh Allen soaks up all of the yards and touchdowns in this offense, and there's not much left for anyone else. But we like Khalil Shakir the best of his weapons. Wide receiver 28 is Calvin Ridley, new quarterback, and Mason Rudolph. That is confirmed. Should be better. We don't know if it's going to be better. At least he plays Indy, but Indy did have a decent game in the secondary last week. So we'll see. Marvin Harrison at wide receiver 29. We've been fading him down here for weeks. It has been correct to do so, but he plays Carolina. Can Kyler do something against Carolina? I don't know. We think it's the James Conner show, but maybe it's the Marvin Harrison show. Probably not. It's probably also the Trey McBride show. Marvin Harrison, wide receiver 29. And then Adam Thielen, why did you throw up a ridiculous down game last week after you destroyed the Eagles 2 weeks ago? It made no sense. I think he's back against Arizona at wide receiver 30. He can at least do a little something for you in your playoff lineup.
Yeah, that is true. We hope so. Like, I'll talk about Jalen Coker a little bit later and how he kind of chips into a little bit. But yeah, to answer your question by doing a little bit of research, which I should have done before the show, Seahawks are like league average man coverage rates, it looks like. They're much better with man coverage. It's like as far as grading goes, they're much better against that. But they play pretty much even both man and zone. So for Addison, I'm not too worried about Addison. I think he's been a consistently good play this in pretty much the entire year. But specifically down the stretch when we were worried about TJ Hawkinson, it's like, you know what, man? Addison's just showing he's a good secondary option in offense. The nice thing is he doesn't have to be because they have Hawkinson. But those two go back and forth and put up good points for you. For the guys in this tier, I love some Khalil Shakir, to your point. It just gets really hard to rank Shakir inside the top 24 wide receivers, but it probably should start doing that because he's just been consistently been really, really good because he's the wide receiver one on that offense. Until the ghost of Amari Cooper decides to show up and be consistent, he had the 114 game target game. And then outside of that, it's just been like Cooper's not part of the offense. Khalil Shakir's been over double-digit points every game except one since week 6. He's been really good. You've seen the targets, nothing lower than 7. So, he's very much a centralized part of that passing attack. And I think he makes life a lot easier with Josh Allen, considering the tight end situation. Kincaid's not living up to that. Shakir kind of fills some of that and makes it a lot easier. So, it's a little short. ADA, he has the act and all that fun stuff. But, yeah, he's just a good player. And, we just got to stop fading him. So, I think he's a guy you got to play. And then the other guy in this range is you could do Devonta Smith against Washington. Their defense is not that good. And I think the nice thing about Washington, unlike some of these other games, they're going to have to kind of push the pace because Washington will score against them and make it a little bit more interesting. So I think they do have to feature Devonta Smith more than they would normally. And that's good for fantasy. So that's why Devonta finds himself in the top 26 wide receivers.
Yep. Back in week 11 against Washington, Devonta Smith had 4.9 half PPR fantasy points, 6 targets, just 4 for 29. But last week against Pittsburgh, 12 targets, 11 receptions, 109, and a score. They even handed the ball off to him once. He's a guy who can absolutely crush with volume. You just don't know when he's going to get it. This team hasn't needed to give it. I don't know if Washington's going to score in this one, but at home, Washington will be. Maybe they find their flow a little bit more. Terry gets home potentially. Brian Robinson can work it and make Devonta Smith necessary. You know who's probably not necessary? Calvin Ridley. Really like this run out for this Titans team, but now we're changing quarterbacks. That should be an upgrade, but the fact that they've changed back and forth so many times has just made it difficult. Against Cincinnati last week, just the 5 targets for 3 receptions and 41 yards. Calvin Ridley hasn't scored a touchdown since week 10. He scored 2 in that game and only has 3 on the season. So can you trust him in the fantasy playoffs against Indy? Probably not.
It's tough. It sucks. It's like you could make the case to play him, but I think you likely have better upside guys who have a better shot of hitting than Ridley does this week because it seems like you're kind of throwing up a prayer with him this week.
Damn. Let's move on to our tier 6 of wide receivers, 31 through 36. And we start with Keenan Allen. He should probably be ranked higher. This is definitely my fault. I am twice as low on him at wide receiver 36 than Jesse is at wide receiver 18. The man keeps catching touchdowns. And he had a beautiful, he was like a yard inbounds, but had his toes like a yard. Do you see that catch? Had his toes a yard inbounds and leans over and beautiful fingertip catch. Just doing unnecessary things, but doing them well. Keenan Allen, our wide receiver 31. DK Metcalf down bad at wide receiver 32 against a Minnesota defense that gives up points to the wide receiver. We just need to see it from him alongside JSN. He hasn't really been able to do that yet since coming back from injury. Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver 23 at Cincinnati. We want to rank him higher. We cannot rank him higher. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is the reason why. Jerry Jeudy, will he see the same volume? It's possible. Will it matter? No. It's really hard to play Jeudy. Wide receiver 34, it's really hard to play Darnell Mooney, even against the Giants. 2 great matchups for these guys, but Mooney goosed you last week, and now he's got a new quarterback. Who will the rookie prefer? Maybe it's the guys. Maybe it's, I don't even know who the wide receiver 5 is on this team, but maybe it's that guy, whoever Penix has been working with all season long. It hasn't been Mooney.
Goodness.
Mooney's been running with the ones. So he's our wide receiver 34. We got Jalen McMillan ascending. The rookie wide receiver who's probably had the biggest jump in the last couple of weeks is McMillan. Now he plays Dallas, the Trevon Diggs-less Dallas Cowboys at Dallas. I think McMillan does really nicely once again alongside Mike Evans. And then Jameson Williams at wide receiver 36 against Chicago. We want Jameson Williams to go off. We want to see him ranked higher. We just don't know when it's going to be. Boom, bust. J-Mo is at wide receiver 36.
Yeah, and to your point on Keenan Allen in this offense, why I want to play him. He's had 20 points in 3 of his last performances. He's been really, really good, and he's just been a feature point of that offense. When you look at first read and stuff, he's right up there, ahead of DJ Moore. They clearly trust with this offense. The nice thing against Detroit is they're going to be trailing in this game. Detroit's offense is practically unstoppable right now. You saw this exact situation played on Thanksgiving where they got behind by a bunch and they just had to air it out. And that's where he ended up with what did he have? He had 2 touchdowns in that game, 24 fantasy points, ended up with 73 yards. You're not going to see a 150-point game for Keenan Allen. You're going to see a lot of targets and you're going to see a lot of catches. So PPR leagues, he's totally fine for you. I'm with you. I have him above DJ Moore, but I want to play both those guys. I really like the matchup against the Detroit Lions, as long as Caleb does not get killed. That's the one exception. Just stay healthy, Caleb. I think he'll be fine. For Mooney, I do want to say I think Penix is actually a better scenario for him because he can chuck it downfield and really hit those deep shots to Mooney. The weird thing with Cousins, we talked about that, their neutral passing rate, they just stopped passing the lowest rate in the NFL. They were just tired of it. So it was more a matter of time before they decided, you know what, we're going to move on, see how it goes. Yeah, the Mooney stuff was weird. I think that's just a one-game outlier. I think you could go back to him against the Giants. This, he should be fine. It's risky with Penix just because we don't know how it's going to go, and we have not seen him, so we're banking on what we saw in college. You'll see Penix. He has the arm strength and the willingness to chuck it deep. They're probably going to take some deep shots. I think Mooney is in that Jameson Williams tier with that, where we don't know how it's going to go. The difference is he's been more centralized percentage of this offense. Like he's the number 2 target. He's got almost 100 targets on the season, so I think he's a good play this week. And yeah, McMillan, like you're going up against Dallas. They need a secondary option. He stepped forward the last 2 weeks, 7 and 6 targets. He's lived off the touchdowns, though. He has 3 touchdowns. So, like, we're still banking a little bit of production into the targets. But Dallas and Carolina, man, like, those defenses are trash. So, as long as Baker, who's playing, is better than the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if he stays upright and he's not pressured too much against Dallas, he'll be able to carve them up with McMillan and Evans. So, that's why you see both of these guys really high in rankings, because it's a good matchup and you just want to fire them.
Yeah. Absolutely crazy. His ascension. We knew the talent was there. We love this wide receiver, especially you, Jesse, from your Washington Huskies. And he is proving why he was picked where he was picked. The problem was he just couldn't get on the field early, whether it was, I think he had a hamstring early on. And then, of course, he might have had 2 injuries, actually. But then, with Chris Godwin doing what he was doing, there was no way McMillan was going to see much. Godwin goes out, so it's the perfect storm. Everything materialized for him, and they need him, right? So they need to get him and keep him going weekly so that this team can absolutely function. We've seen what it's done the last couple of weeks. They are crushing. One quick note on your boy, DK Metcalf. He is absolutely not crushing since he came back from injury and off the bye. There are now 5 games, Jesse. We now have 5 games of DK Metcalf post-bye, post-injury. How many total receptions do you think DK Metcalf has? And I'm going to say, is it over or under 20 receptions for DK Metcalf in 5 games?
Okay, this one's going to be close. You said a good line on that one. It hasn't been good, so you think I want to go under. I'm going to say like he has like slightly over would be my guess. But yeah, I don't feel good about it. I don't like this. It's just not been clicking for DK. Like he had 9 in the first game, like 9 targets, and then I remember after that's just falling off. So I'm not really sure what his receptions are at. So we'll say over slightly.
Slightly over is correct. 22 receptions for DK Metcalf. He's had 2 9-target games, hasn't really gotten home. No more than 70 yards and 0 touchdowns in his last 5 games. This is the problem for DK Metcalf. He's really been struggling. He hasn't finished better than wide receiver 32 in half PPR in his last 5 games. JSN to the moon.
Yes. It's nice. At least we got one nice wide receiver right now. JSN is him. Come on, DK, come back. Yeah, I think it's just offensive line. Like that's really limiting everything they're doing right now. So they got to figure it out. And as long as Gino's going to play, which looks like he will, at least gives him a shot. So just hope it works out.
Totally agree. We'll do one more tier before we get to the best of the rest. This is tier 7 wide receivers 37 to 42. And we start with Jaden Reed, Mr. Disappearing Man, I guess you could say. Going up against New Orleans, should smash in this game. Probably not. You can also say the same about Josh Downs at wide receiver 38 going against Tennessee. Should smash in this game. Probably not. Wide receiver 39, DeAndre Hopkins against Houston, his old team. Should smash in this game. Probably not, but maybe he finds the answer. Michael Pittman at wide receiver 40. Josh Downs' teammate. He should not be ranked this high, but here we are. Wide receiver 41 is Rome Odunze. Great talent. They target him sometimes. He produces never. At least he's going against Detroit. 2025, Rome. We'll just plan for 2025. And Romeo Dobbs, my favorite waiver wire pickup of the week. In fact, I picked him up this morning for $0 fab in my home redraft league, and I will start him as my second flex, probably over Adam Thielen, although I should go by rankings, Jesse. But Romeo Dobbs at wide receiver 42, going up against those New Orleans Saints. That's kind of these guys. How do you feel about any of them, all of them, none of them? What do you like?
Yeah, sounds like it's time to adjust those rankings, right? So we have the support of it. We do that. But like Romeo Dobbs is very interesting. Like his expected role is second best. That's because the usage for Jaden Reed was really good. And then in the second half, it's really fallen off for Reed. So Dobbs is hitting about where his expected points per game is. It's like 12.2. He's at 12.3 fantasy points per game.
Yep.
He's been fine. He's just been the more consistent option in that offense the last second half of the season. So that's what it is. You have to trust it. You want to see with Reed, this should be a good Jaden Reed game, but like that dude, I don't know where he's gone or what he's done to kind of fall out of rotation with that team. They're just not prioritizing like they were earlier in the year. So they're really just like leaning into the Josh Jacobs and like how Josh Jacobs is carrying teams. It's kind of trickled down and affected the wide receivers because Jordan Love's like, we could just run the ball and beat you guys. So like, as much as I'm a gunslinger, let's just do that. And then like Hopkins or Downs, the Downs stuff, like Downs is, I prefer Downs to Reed if I'm going to play either one of those guys, but like, I don't really like either of those guys. So and then Pittman, yeah, you're right. We should move Pittman down because there's other guys I like more lower. So when I'm looking at the ranking, like I would much rather, like I have Xavier Worthy significantly above him. A couple other guys, like I do Jalen Coker over freaking Pittman this week. Like I just don't want to do the AR, even against Tennessee. Their defense is kind of falling apart. I just really don't want to do his pass catcher. So unfortunately with those guys, it's this kind of range, this tier of wide receivers, I do not specifically look forward to playing these guys. So when I'm looking at those guys, I probably need to move Hopkins down because I don't want to play one of the other guys. It's a rough spot for a few of these guys for a caveat of different reasons, right? So it's down for Reed, it's down for Downs, Hopkins, Pittman. None of them are really living up to expectations. So it's just kind of just like you can play them, but you're better off probably playing other guys lower in rankings, which means I need to adjust rankings.
100%. I don't want to talk about any of these guys, but I did say yesterday that I would rank Romeo Doubs over Jaden Reed this week. I haven't done that yet. Obviously, I will do that before the week ends. It's Romeo Doubs and no one else. Sadly, Jaden Reed, come on, let's get it together next year, guys. Jordan Love, come on, take a step up. But that's all we're going to say about that. Let's go to the best of the rest. This is really our tier 8, but tier 9, who cares what tier it is? These are just the guys that we might play in a pinch due to injury here in the semifinals. We got guys like you mentioned already, like Xavier Worthy and Jalen Coker. We got guys like Amari Cooper here, Rashad Bateman, who's gone off recently, Deebo Samuel, who cannot catch a thing, but should see plenty of targets, Quentin Johnston, who finds the end zone weekly. Do you like any of these guys, and who are you willing to play this week?
Man, I do not want to play QJ against Denver. That sounds like a nightmare matchup for him, just because he's not really a good like route runner, and like that's going to be a significant issue. He can do the busted covers thing, or he can just high point a ball and get a touchdown. It's just I don't trust him. Bateman's been solid. You could do Bateman against Pittsburgh, but like Pittsburgh's defense, it's a little bit worrisome. I will say Deebo. I'm benching Deebo in my league, so I'm not looking forward to play him. I have Jalen Coker 5 spots above Deebo. As weird as that sounds, I would rather play Jalen Coker because he came back last week. He's finally healthy, and he's been like a month plus about. Saw 20+% of snaps again. Really, like we talked about Thielen. I think him and Thielen could kind of pair together, but they're going to limit each other a little bit just because they don't pass a ton in Carolina. You don't see Bryce Young going back and throwing it 45 times. That's not the likely Carolina game script, right? So this game should be a little bit slow, close to the vest. The targets will be there, but I don't expect either one of them to go off. And yeah, Worthy finally had his blow-up game. It feels like it's just massively going under the radar.
Yes.
So people are kind of just like not talking about it in the community, which is weird to me. I think you should really get in that because he also had 11 targets, which is more than he's had by far in the season. So against Houston, they need this playmaker, and like with the limitations of that offense, it's like, why not dive into this when we talk about second half of the season rookies stepping forward? Could be where we see it with Xavier Worthy in this game. So yeah, like I like Xavier Worthy a lot of these guys, and he's probably the guy I'm targeting, which is why I have him significantly above everyone else. He's the one I'm for sure playing out of this group.
Yeah, love Xavier Worthy. My only concern going up against Houston is Derek Stingley, who absolutely shut down Tyreek Hill last week, snatching interceptions from his fingertips on 2 occasions. That's my only issue. If you are the Houston Texans, you have to put Derek Stingley on Xavier Worthy. Can Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes scheme up ways to get Xavier Worthy off of Stingley and away from that coverage? And yeah, absolutely. Will it be enough? I don't know. But yes, Worthy looks like another rookie wide receiver on the rise, and you love to see it. Quick question for you, because we mentioned QJ. It's always fun to talk about QJ. How many touchdowns does Quentin Johnston have on the season?
Oh, he's got a lot. I don't think it's quite double digits. I'll say he has something like 7 would be my guess. I know it's in that range somewhere.
Jesse, you are a savant. He has just 34 receptions, just 459 yards, but 8 receiving touchdowns on the year.
Close.
That includes 5 touchdowns, 1 in each of his last 7 games. QJ is going off. That's called Justin Herbert doing his thing. Quentin Johnson, however, last time they played Denver, just 3 receptions on 4 targets for 22 yards and no scores. But that was that was pre-injury Quentin Johnson. Post-injury Quentin Johnson is a different animal. And we'll see if is Will Dissly out for the season yet? I don't know.
I think he is. I think he's on IR. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I think he's gone for a while.
So Stone Smart looks good, but doesn't necessarily command the targets. QJ last week against Tampa had the most targets he saw all season with 10. So it's possible. He could be reliable, but probably not.
Yeah. If Pickens is out this week, are you going to move Calvin Austin up significantly, or are you just kind of put him at like wide receiver 50, just hope he hits?
Yeah, I'm always a week early with this crap, man. I did that 2 weeks ago. I was like, Calvin Austin's going to smash when Pickens is out. Nope. Didn't do jack nothing. And then last week, Calvin Austin had a pretty nice game. Am I going to move him up against, is it the Ravens? Is it the Ravens for them this week? I think it is. Probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably. Damn it.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Yeah, he did a deep shot, big play against Baltimore. I mean, that pass defense is atrocious, so it's possible, but yeah, I'm with you. It's very much.
I don't know if I want to.
As you can see, we had a bit of technical difficulties at the ending of this show, but I'm here to say that's our Week 16 wide receiver ranking show. Our top, 42-ish wide receivers, good amount. Hopefully they help you move on to the championship game, or if it's a 2-week semifinal, push forward to the next week and, get an advantage. But anyways, that's it from the FF universe. So for myself, Aaron, Jeremy, and SE, take care. And yeah, look forward to QB and tight end show tomorrow. And then we'll be off, we'll be going to the Saturday show, the roundtable, and then Sis Star show on Sunday. So good luck with those wide receiver rankings, folks.